The question of what makes a reform successful in education is highly context specific. But again, what our research shows us, working with a range of countries, the OECD membership is very diverse from Mexico to Norway to South Korea. A common factor that informs success is the coherence of the policy. It's not, should we be focusing on the curriculum or should we be focusing on teachers? It's that we're setting the same objectives and aligning policies behind them. So it's the internal coherence on the one hand, and also I think a factor particularly important for a country like Brazil at the moment, it's the continuity of reform. It's recognizing that education reform takes time to take effect in the classroom, and maintaining a coherent policy over the medium to long term is very important. And I think if you look domestically within Brazil at those states that are doing well, it's also those states that have had a degree of continuity in reform. I think at the moment the question in terms of the balance between the common core and the choice for students, it's difficult for an outsider to really understand where the conversation is at present. But I think if you look at the experience from OECD countries, there's a few lessons. One around the common core. So I think there's a risk that you have here in Brazil of having a common core that is still too broad. If you look at what upper secondary students know in core domains, I'm talking about language skills and numeracy, when they start upper secondary education, they're 2 to 3 years behind their peers in OECD countries. So the importance of ensuring there's adequate time in core domains, Portuguese and mathematics will be critical. So not overburdening the core curriculum. And secondly, in terms of introducing choice, suggesting pathways is perhaps helpful, but realizing that in a country like Brazil and setting too strict parameters for what those pathways will look like risks perhaps reinforcing inequalities. I think it will be important to give schools considerable choice in terms of the options that they're made available, and having on the one hand a core curriculum, on the other hand electives, but giving states and municipalities choice in terms of the type of choice they make available will be important. I think if you look at what's valued by society in terms of citizenship skills, social skills, how to interact with others, respect, critical skills for social cohesion, they're very similar to the type of skills that are valued in the labour market. If you look at the surveys that have been done in terms of what employers value, the primary skills are those softer social and emotional skills. So I think it's important to avoid false dichotomies. How to integrate social and emotional skills into the curriculum in a way that doesn't overload a curriculum and that ensures that there's adequate time for students to learn in depth is a challenge to which I think countries haven't found an answer. But you look at the ways in which countries that are seen as top performers, for example, countries in Asia, where students come out at the top at most league tables in terms of student learning outcomes, their approach has to be to integrate that within the domains of education. It's not to put it as a separate subject. I think when you look at Brazil from a comparative perspective, and you look at the upper secondary system as it exists today from a comparative perspective, one thing that stands out is the underdevelopment of vocational education. Participation is around 10% of the cohort in Brazil. In OECD countries, it's close to 50%. Those countries like Portugal, like Ireland that have succeeded in expanding participation and improving outcomes of upper secondary education. They have done that by creating attractive alternatives for students that do not aspire to go to university, that are looking for training and education that's going to help them get a better job and contribute better to the economy of their local economy. And at that moment, that pathway doesn't exist really in Brazil. And there's a lot of research that the OECD has done around what makes for a quality vocational system at this level. And the most important factor is giving students direct exposure to the labour market, i.e. apprenticeships, internships, that's valuable in developing skills that are relevant to the labour market, but also helping students to make informed choices, but also ensuring that the productive sector values and has confidence in the vocational schooling that's being provided.